Hello, my name is Annie, and I'm just saying. Today's episode is going to be about communication, and about why is it important, and about the fact that we don't use it efficient enough, and that we underestimate it. And one of the biggest mistakes that I would like to discuss is the fact that we very often in our conversations make everything very black and white, and often quite dramatic. And that's a big mistake. Nobody likes to hear that they never, or they always, or that we all of a sudden hate them, or just, everything is just being pushed to this 100%, while usually it's not like so. If we're angry with someone, it does not mean that we, in the meantime, stopped loving them, or stopped liking them, or stopped caring about them. So, telling someone, oh my god, I hate you so much, well, that doesn't really express how you feel about him, does it? It's more like, hey, I like you, or I love you, but what you have just done, this makes me angry. Like, it just makes me mad. And I don't want to be mad at you because I care for you and I care for our relation. And when you put it this way, it sounds so much better. And it sounds so much more true to what it actually is. The precision of the language we use is extremely important, especially when it comes to dealing with others, and let's face it, that's where communication comes actually handy. And it's helpful for everyone. It's helpful for us because we learn to identify and name our emotions and to vocalize what we do like, what we don't like. And it also helps this other side understand us better. And with this improvement comes the fact that we need to kind of start to trust each other again, trust our words. Because we need to learn to listen again. Instead of playing these games of like, hey, you should have figured that out because I just said like, oh, I don't want you to be here now, and you actually went away while I meant like, no, wait, stay, or like, I would like you to say something or whatever. So instead of playing these games of go figure and the stuff that you should thought about it yourself, like, no, instead we need to trust each other that, hey, listen, when I'm voicing when I'm voicing something in a proper way, and I actually am letting you know that this and this annoys me, or this and this bothers me, that you don't have to figure out anything else. Like, there's nothing else there, no hidden message, no hidden agenda, this is it. And thanks to that, we can finally bring words back to their meaning, because nowadays it so often seems as if words don't have meaning at all, while they do, and they have a great power. And we just need to start talking, and we need to start listening to each other. And this is so important that I can't stress it enough. There are so many issues that people are going through in their relationships, not only the romantic ones, but the ones with their parents, the one with their friends. And it so often comes from the fact that we just don't talk. Like, we say a lot, but a lot of this stuff is just fluff. It's meaningless. It's just there to fill the void, to fill the silence. And about the appreciation of silence, I think I'm gonna do a totally another episode, because that deserves it. It's its own thing. But to start putting meanings back to the words where it actually belongs, and start talking in a more direct manner, in a manner that makes it matter, and listening to each other instead of trying to see beyond, that's what matters, that's what's important, and I really think that we need to work on that. And what I mean by working for it and on it and stuff, like, yeah, everybody individually should work on that, in my honest opinion, but it's also important to to train this communication within the relation about which we're thinking. Because communication with our mother or with our significant other or with our friend may look completely different, and all of them can be just fine. But still they should be based on the same foundation of honesty and putting meaning to words. Don't say stuff just because. Say it if you mean it. This is another very important thing. Stop trying to say the right thing. There is no such thing. There is no scenario. There is no thing that this exactly is what you should say. You should say what you feel. You should talk about what you see. You should speak. So many times people are like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know this. I don't know that. And the fact that we're lost for words so often doesn't really come from the fact that we don't have words to describe what it is. It's just because words became meaningless, so we think that even if we put it a certain way, it won't work. And sometimes we forget about the fact that it's totally fine to say, I don't know how to name what I feel exactly, but, and try to describe it. Literally, what people do when they are taught a new language and they can't remind themselves of the certain word, or they don't have a word for a specific thing, and they just are trying to give a description or the next best thing. And we should do that about our emotions and the situations we're in as well. And it would just make life so much easier and matter so much better, instead of making these assumptions about what somebody means and what do they actually want, just starting to listen to each other. And this is something that the practice of it goes a very long way, and honestly, people who have the best relations have to communicate in a very great way. And it's not only on this daily basis, it comes most handy in crisis situation. And this crisis can be whatever. It can be just some argument, but it can be something that is just somewhere deep in us or on our mind. And we need to voice it. Thing with talking is that we actually give it a form, then we can work on it. If we just keep something hidden inside, or keeping it just somewhere in the atmosphere around us and around our relation, then it can actually start to suffocate us and stop us from having the best relation we can get, from having the greatest time, from feeling good. And it's just not worth it. It's so much better to actually talk it through, or just sometimes just let it out, let it go. But this is where it comes so very important, like the way in which we do it. Because we should always remember about different parts and different layers. We are not this one big blob that forms in a certain way at the time. So let's say that right now I'm 100% shining happiness, or right now I'm just nothing but sadness, or right now I'm just fully and completely disappointed. Like, certain emotions and states take some parts of us, take some layers, take some space, but they are temporary, most of all. And second of all, that's not so very common that we are actually fully consummated by a certain feeling. Of course, there comes moments in life where we are actually 100% sadness, or we're extremely very happy and we're just shining bright as sun shines. And that's amazing and that's human, but very often when we argue with someone, or where we actually want to bring these big guns, we really tend to hit too hard. We're saying, oh my god, you are just so frustrating, irritating, annoying, you just, oh my god, I had enough of you, just stop being the way you are. And of course, that's not exactly what we mean to say most of the times. Instead, it's really so much more efficient and actually so much better to come from the good parts, from the positive parts, from a basic standpoint. So being like, hey, you are my mother, or you are my love, or you are my friend, or I value our relation. Whoever this person is, coming from the standpoint of care for this relation, and that whatever we're about to say is supposed to serve it. It's not supposed to hurt, even if it won't be easy. That's not our intention. That the intention itself and why we are coming out with it is because we care, because it matters, because it's important. And when we start this way, it's really so much easier to see what we're saying for what it really is. And to see how important that is, how thought through, and that it's just actually, that it actually matters, that it's actually important, and that it's not just pointless chat that is aimed to just, well, yeah, it pretty much deletes the idea of it all being pointless, because it isn't. Because we took the time to think about it, and we are coming from the place of care. And then after we stated not the obvious, but the facts, the basics of where we come from and why we want to talk about it, then comes the fact of slicing ourselves, metaphorically, our insides, in parts, and saying like, listen, I have so much care for you in me, but there is this little piece of me that is just so angry about certain things that you do. And it would be very great if right now we would actually put it in words. What is it that this person does that frustrates us so much, or for whatever reason, maybe we feel disappointed with it, maybe however we feel, that's like another episode on its own when it comes to owing to your feelings and taking some responsibility for the way you feel. But to express the fact that we're not filled with this anger or frustration or disappointment, and that there is so much good around it, but there is that part that just bothers us. It's like this little Lego piece that we just stepped on, and it just hurts, just right there, right then. That's just annoying. And putting it that way, that hey, there's this part that hurts, and I would like to be rid of it. I would like us to resolve the issue. I would like us to talk about it, and I would like to try and soothe it. I would try to rid of it. So please hear me out. And communicating something this way, whatever the blow is, whatever the part that they're doing wrong is, it's so much easier to understand that, so this person actually loves me, cares about me, but this certain behavior, certain thing annoys this person. And then when we take this first, there are also many things that we tend to say. Sometimes we go into defense and we say, no, but I never, or like, oh, no, you're getting it wrong, or like, that's not what's happening, or why would you think about it, or like, oh my god, you always complain, stuff like that. Or we go even further into defense, we disregard what we just heard, and we just go into offense being our best defense, and we're like, yeah, but you never do XYZ, or like, yeah, but you often do this, and that. Oh, really? And what about you? And like trying to make it about this other person, and kind of trying to top up what we just heard. And that's also a very bad idea, and doesn't lead to any constructive communication at all. So right now, what would be best to be said and communicated is the fact that I hear you. and to accept what has been said, because even if we disagree with that, we can express it further. But at first, we need to take it as it comes, because somebody gave us their side of the story. Like, this is how they feel, this is how they see it. And there will be time, in a moment or a bit later, to communicate to them your own reasoning, your own story, your own part. But at first, accept what they said, take it, and try to appreciate the fact that you are both taking the time to do something about it, because this is very important and very precious. And then you can say whether you see it that way, or like, maybe you understand. Sometimes it's so useful to say, okay, I understand why it seems like that to you. Which, of course, should be said only if it's true and you actually do see it as like, yeah, okay, I understand, I heard you, and you're right. From this point of view, that's how it looks. But here's my side. I think that I am doing this, and that because, or like, okay, maybe I'm doing this too often, but sometimes, or like, I appreciate the fact that you're coming with this to me, and now I can work on it. And I agree with you. Whatever there is, it can be talked about. And if we get angry, if we get really upset with whatever we heard, sometimes the best thing is to adjourn, is to say, okay, that sounds like a lot for me to take, and I promise we're gonna get back to that talk. But right now, I cannot respond in any way that would be productive and good for us. So please, let's take a break, let's postpone it, but I promise we're gonna get back. And this is the absolute best thing to do if you actually got super angry, for example. Because there's nothing worse than going into this very negative, very strong, and very vile talk, because it will very much stop being about communication and solving anything. It will just go a bad way, usually. So the important part here is the fact that if we promise someone to get back to them, we need to do that and not push it forever. Because if there is an issue, there was a conversation, and we promised that we'll be back, then let's get back. Somebody, this person that cares for us, does not deserve to just be left hanging. Also, the more we do it, the more often we are speaking in the way that we should, or that in a way that is constructive, productive, and is based and aimed on resolving issues and building on it, then the better it will get in the long run. The better we will become at communicating. And later, we should really see less and less of the issues, not only the ones that we discussed, but issues overall, because our daily communication will improve with it too. We will learn to not wait for things to just pile up, but we will talk on daily basis that, hey, when you did this today, that didn't felt good for me. And just to communicate it that way, it doesn't allow it to become the thing that I hate it when you always do this or you always do that, and trying to get into like these old habits. So instead of waiting for this to happen and for this to be actual possibility, we just say as we go. And we often also forget about it. For some reason, we maybe prefer these big talks. But maybe it's because we just don't want to be bothered so often. So many people just kind of prefer to let it go because they just don't want to take the effort and time it takes to actually talk about what's happening and to resolve it. And as much as I can understand it, because indeed it takes effort and time, I can say that trying to let it all go and let it always go and for all of it to just go away on daily basis, it can, but it will blow at some point. There's only this much that you can just shove under the carpet and out of the way. You can't really do that forever because, well, at some point it's gonna be an elephant in the room, and not only it's very uncomfortable in that room then, but also getting rid of it might be pretty long and painful process. So yeah, just remember, meaning to the words. I don't think this is the one and only time that I'm gonna talk about communication, but I just really felt like talking about the fact that we should be really precise, stop saying things that are very black and white, stop coming from this place of anger and disappointment, and instead coming from care, aiming at building and resolving. I just find it extremely important and wanted to share that with you guys. So maybe thanks to that, you can stop blaming each other, screaming at each other, and just being very vile, and instead just say as things actually are. And they usually ain't nearly as bad as you make them sound. So yeah, that would be it for this specific episode, and subscribe, like if you would like to hear more from me, and I will talk to you soon. I'm Annie, and I'm just saying.